The glass shattered so sharply it felt like it cut the air in half. 1 second the room was alive with soft laughter and low music, and the next it was frozen, every breath held, every eye locked on a single point. Silence dropped hard and sudden, like something heavy falling onto marble, and in that silence, a young black waiter stood completely still, his tray tilted in his hands, his heart slamming so loud he was sure everyone could hear it. The restaurant had been glowing just moments before, washed in warm gold light that bounced off crystal fixtures and polished stone. Money lived in that room. It breathed there. You could feel it in the way people spoke softly but confidently, in the way chairs were pulled out without hurry, in the way servers moved like shadows, careful not to disturb the comfort that wealth expected. The jazz music floated gently through the air, smooth and controlled, like it knew better than to demand attention. Every table whispered status, and everyone inside understood the rules without them ever being spoken. Then the sound of breaking glass erased all of that. The waiter's fingers trembled as he held the tray halfway between serving and stopping. His shoulders were tight, his back straight from years of training himself not to look small, even when he felt it. He had been taught to move quietly, to apologize quickly, to absorb whatever came his way with a polite nod and a lowered gaze. That training weighed heavy now, pressing against his chest as he stood there, caught in the open. Across from him stood a young white woman, tall and composed, dressed in a simple, sleeveless dress that hugged her frame without effort. It wasn't flashy. It didn't need to be. Everything about her said she belonged there. Her hair was perfectly in place, her posture relaxed but firm, her expression sharpened into something cold and controlled. Her jaw tightened as she looked at the waiter, and her eyes hardened like a decision had already been made. "You did this," she said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It cut anyway. Clean. Precise. The kind of tone that expected obedience, not conversation. The kind of tone that assumed agreement before anyone had a chance to disagree. The waiter swallowed. His mouth opened as if his body remembered what it was supposed to do, but no sound came out. His tongue felt thick, useless. His thoughts raced, tripping over each other. He knew what had happened. He knew what he'd seen. But knowing didn't seem to matter in that moment. Not here. Not like this. The woman crossed her arms slowly, deliberately, as if sealing the moment. Calm, certain, powerful. "I watched him spill it," she said, her eyes never leaving his face. "This is unacceptable." The words landed heavy in the air, final. There was no hesitation in them, no space left open for doubt. Around them, diners leaned forward in their seats. Some pretended to check their phones, though their cameras tilted just enough to catch the scene. Others stared openly, curiosity shining brighter than sympathy. Drama in places like this was rare, and when it happened, people treated it like entertainment. The manager appeared almost instantly, drawn by the sound and the shift in energy. He was a polished man in a tailored suit, his smile already forming as he approached the woman. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" he asked, his voice smooth, practiced. She didn't look at him. She pointed instead. "Your waiter spilled a drink all over my table." The manager's eyes flicked to the shattered glass, then to the waiter. The calculation happened quickly, almost invisibly. The waiter saw it anyway. He had seen that look before, a look that measured value, a look that weighed inconvenience against importance. "I didn't," the waiter finally managed, his voice low and shaky. "Ma'am, I didn't." "Enough," she snapped, cutting him off without effort. "I don't want excuses." Her gaze shifted back to the manager now, expectant. The waiter's words hung unfinished, dismissed before they could take shape. Heat rushed to his face. Shame crept up his neck. He felt it settling into his shoulders, heavy and familiar, like an old coat he could never take off. Above them, a small red light blinked quietly from a security camera mounted in the corner. It watched without judgment, without bias. It recorded everything. No one noticed it. No one ever did. The manager sighed softly, already tired of the inconvenience. He turned fully toward the waiter, his tone changing. "Son," he said, lowering his voice just enough to sound gentle. "What happened?" The waiter took a breath, steadying himself. "I was walking past," he said. She stood up, and her bag... The woman scoffed loudly. "Are you serious right now?" She shook her head, disbelief painted across her face. "You're really going to stand there and lie?" Her words drew a ripple of reaction from the surrounding tables. A few murmurs, a raised eyebrow, a smirk. The waiter felt smaller with each second that passed, even as he fought to keep his spine straight. The manager cleared his throat. "Sir," he said, his patience thinning, "this establishment holds its staff to a high standard. If there was a mistake, the right thing to do is take responsibility." The waiter's hands clenched around the tray. His knuckles went white. Years of swallowing disrespect pressed against his chest, memories flashing through his mind in quick, painful images. Being blamed when customers were rude. Being ignored when he spoke. Being told to smile more, to lower his voice, to know his place. He had learned to survive by staying quiet, by apologizing even when he wasn't wrong. But something about this moment felt different. The woman's eyes stayed on him, sharp and unyielding. She looked at him the way people looked at messes they expected someone else to clean up. The manager's gaze carried the weight of authority, but not fairness. Around them, the room waited. "Son," the manager said again, more firmly this time, "apologize to the lady so we can move on." The word son hit him harder than the accusation. It wasn't meant kindly. It wasn't meant to uplift. It was meant to shrink him, to remind him of his position. The waiter felt it crack something open inside him. He lowered his eyes for a brief moment, staring at the floor. His reflection stared back at him in the polished marble. Smaller than he felt, younger, tired. He thought about his mother telling him to keep his head down, about his father teaching him the value of dignity, about how tired he was of choosing survival over self-respect. Then he looked up. Something had changed in his eyes. Not anger, not rage, something quieter, stronger, dignity. "I didn't spill it," he said, his voice steadier now, "and I'm not going to apologize for something I didn't do." The room seemed to inhale all at once. The woman blinked, clearly not expecting resistance. The manager stiffened, surprise flashing across his face before irritation replaced it. "Excuse me?" the woman said softly, disbelief laced with offense. "Do you know who I am?" The waiter held her gaze. His heart raced, but he didn't look away. "I know what happened," he replied. A tense silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable. Somewhere in the background, a fork clinked against a plate. The jazz music continued to play, oblivious, its smooth rhythm clashing with the sharpness of the moment. The manager stepped closer to the waiter, lowering his voice. "You're making this worse for yourself," he warned. "Think carefully." The waiter thought about it. He really did. He thought about the paycheck he needed, about the shifts he couldn't afford to lose, about how easy it would be to say two simple words and make all of this go away. He thought about the way the woman stood so confidently, certain the world would bend to her version of events. He thought about how often it had. "I am thinking carefully," he said quietly. "That's why I'm standing here." The woman let out a short, humorless laugh. "Unbelievable," she said. "This is what happens when you give people too much freedom." The words were sharp, ugly. They cut deeper than she knew. A few diners shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others nodded, agreeing silently. The waiter felt the weight of the room pressing down on him, daring him to break. Above them, the camera kept recording. Every movement, every word, every truth. The manager rubbed his temple, frustration etched across his face. "We don't have time for this," he said. "I'll handle it." He turned back to the woman, his smile returning, apologetic. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. We'll take care of this immediately." The waiter's stomach dropped. He knew what that meant. He had seen it before. He was already being written off, already being labeled a problem. "I don't need compensation," the woman said coolly. "I need accountability." Her eyes flicked back to the waiter, daring him to speak again. He didn't. Not because he couldn't, but because he had already said what needed to be said. Now he waited. The tension in the room stretched thin, like a wire pulled too tight. No one noticed the red light blinking steadily in the corner. No one noticed the quiet witness to it all, not yet. The manager opened his mouth to speak again, to deliver whatever decision he had already made, when something unseen and unstoppable continued to capture the truth from above, patient and unblinking, ready to tell a very different story than the one being told out loud. The apology sat in the air like a bruise no one wanted to touch. It wasn't spoken yet, but everyone could feel it coming, heavy and forced, already shaping itself around the waiter's mouth before he even opened it. The room waited for him to bow his head and make it easy. That was the expectation. That was the rule. "I didn't spill it," the waiter said quietly. His voice shook, but not because he was scared. It shook because he was holding something back. Years of swallowing words, years of being told when to speak and when not to. The sound came out controlled, tight, like a door held shut against a storm. The woman laughed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel in an obvious way. It was soft, polished, dismissive, the kind of laugh that told the room she had already won. "Are you calling me a liar?" she asked. Her eyes narrowed just slightly, not in anger, but in disbelief that someone like him would dare challenge someone like her. The manager stiffened immediately, his shoulders tightening as if he felt the shift before it fully arrived. "Sir, please," he said quickly, stepping closer to the woman, his body angling toward her in a way that was not subtle at all. "She's a valued guest." Valued. The word landed in the waiter's chest and stayed there. It echoed. Valued meant protected. Valued meant believed. Valued meant the truth bent itself around your comfort. The waiter nodded once, slow, as if acknowledging something painful but familiar. He glanced around the room. Nearby diners suddenly found their napkins fascinating. Glasses were lifted, plates were adjusted, no one wanted to be involved. A few people, though, watched closely, eyes sharp, interest flickering. In rooms like this, silence wasn't empty. It was powerful. It was a choice. The woman adjusted the strap of her sleeveless dress and leaned back in her chair as if the moment bored her now. She didn't even look at the waiter when she spoke again. "People like him always have excuses," she said calmly. "People like him." The words were smooth, practiced, said without heat. That made them worse. The waiter felt them sink into him, heavy and cold. His throat tightened. His mind raced. His job. His rent. His mother's medicine sitting in a small brown bottle on the kitchen counter back home. All of it balanced on this moment. All of it hanging on whether he chose dignity or survival. "I was serving the table behind you," he said, forcing the words out slowly, carefully. "You stood up too fast. Your bag." "Enough!" the manager snapped. The sharpness in his voice cut through the room, louder than the jazz, louder than the whispers. Heads turned again. The waiter flinched before he could stop himself. "You're embarrassing yourself," the manager continued. "This is not the place for arguments." The woman smirked. It was small, barely there, but it said everything. Victory without effort. Power without question. She didn't need to raise her voice. The room had already done the work for her. Two security guards stepped closer, their presence subtle but unmistakable. They didn't touch the waiter. They didn't need to. Their bodies spoke for them. "End this. Or we will—" The waiter felt his hands curl into fists at his sides. His nails pressed into his palms, grounding him. He closed his eyes for a second. Just one. He breathed in, deep, measured, the way his father had taught him when the world felt like it was trying to push him down. "I respect myself too much to lie," he said. The words came out steady, clear, honest. That made her turn. Slowly, deliberately. Her chair creaked softly as she leaned forward, finally giving him her full attention. Her eyes were sharp now, offended, not because she had been wronged, but because she had been challenged. "How dare you," she whispered. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls closer, the air heavier. The manager's jaw tightened. He reached for the radio clipped to his belt, his thumb hovering over the button like a warning. "We'll handle this," he said into the space between them, already deciding what that meant. The waiter knew that tone. He had heard it before, in different places, different uniforms, same meaning. "This ends now, and not in your favor." The woman leaned back again, crossing her arms, satisfied. The guards shifted their weight. The diners leaned in just a little more. Everyone waited for the final act, the apology, the removal, the quiet erasing of a problem. Then a voice cut through the tension. Wait, it wasn't loud, it wasn't confident. It trembled slightly like someone stepping onto thin ice. Heads turned toward the sound. At the back of the room stood a young woman in a simple black outfit, holding a tablet close to her chest. She was part of the staff, but not front-facing. A technician, the kind of worker people rarely noticed unless something went wrong. She hesitated, eyes darting from the manager to the waiter to the woman in the chair. Her grip tightened on the tablet. "There's footage," she said. The word hung there, uncertain. The manager frowned. "What?" The technician swallowed. "The security camera," she said softly. "It caught everything." A murmur rippled through the room, low and sudden. Chairs shifted. Phones rose higher now, no longer pretending. The woman's expression flickered, just for a moment. Something like doubt passed through her eyes before she smoothed it away. "That won't be necessary," she said quickly. "This is already settled." The technician didn't move. She looked at the waiter then, just briefly. Their eyes met. In that glance, something passed between them. Recognition, solidarity, fear. "I think it is necessary," the technician said, her voice firmer now, surprising even herself. "It shows what happened." The manager's face tightened. He glanced at the woman, then back at the technician. This was not part of the script. This was not convenient. "Ma'am," he said carefully to the woman, "perhaps we should review it, just to be sure." The woman's jaw clenched. "Are you questioning me now?" she snapped. "No," he said quickly, "of course not. Just procedure. Procedure." The word tasted strange in a room where rules bent so easily. The technician stepped forward, tablet held out in both hands. The screen glowed faintly. The waiter's heart pounded. He didn't know what the camera had caught. He only knew what he remembered, the angle, the movement, the truth as he had lived it. The restaurant leaned forward as one. Even the jazz seemed to fade, the music dropping lower, slower, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Forks paused mid-air. Conversations died completely, all attention fixed on that small glowing screen. The woman sat very still now, her arms uncrossed, her fingers pressed against the table. Confidence didn't leave her face, but it tightened, like a mask worn too long. The manager hesitated, torn between two worlds. The world where money spoke loudest, and the world where evidence didn't care who you were. "Go ahead," he said finally, his voice quiet. The technician tapped the screen. The footage began to play, silent but clear. The angle was wide, unforgiving. It showed the waiter moving carefully behind the woman's chair, his tray balanced, his steps measured. It showed the woman standing suddenly, her designer. Bags swinging outward. It showed the glass tipping, falling, shattering. A sharp inhale swept through the room. The waiter felt his knees weaken, relief rushing through him so fast it almost hurt. He stayed still, though. He didn't move. He didn't smile. He watched the truth play out without expression. "That's not," the woman began, then stopped. The technician replayed the clip, slower this time. "Clearer," whispers erupted, no longer subtle, no longer polite. "She did it. It wasn't him. She blamed him." The manager stared at the screen, his face pale. The guards shifted again, uncertain now. The power in the room wobbled, just slightly, like a tower losing its balance. The woman's lips parted. She searched the room, looking for support, for agreement, for anything to anchor her. It wasn't there. Eyes that once avoided the waiter now studied her instead. "This angle is misleading," she said weakly. "It doesn't show everything." The technician met her gaze. "It shows enough." The waiter finally exhaled, slowly, fully. He felt something loosen in his chest, something he hadn't realized he'd been carrying for years. Not triumph, not joy, something quieter, validation. The manager straightened, his authority cracking. I didn't realize," he said, his voice barely audible. The room buzzed now, alive in a different way. Phones were no longer hidden. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was exposure. The woman pushed her chair back slightly, the sound loud in the silence. "We can discuss this privately," she said, her voice tight. "There's no need for a scene." The waiter looked at her then, really looked. He saw the fear beneath the polish, the discomfort of being seen without control. "No," he said softly. The word landed heavy. The balance of power trembled, not shattered yet, but shaken, and everyone felt it. The camera above them blinked Tly having already done its job, while the room waited to see what would fall next. The screen lit up, and the room forgot how to breathe. There was no sound, no dramatic music, no narrator to soften the moment, just light spilling from a small tablet, cutting through the heavy air like a blade. Truth doesn't announce itself. It simply shows up, and when it does, it doesn't care who you are. The camera angle was clear, brutal, undeniable. Every eye locked onto the screen, every head leaned forward. Even the people who had pretended not to care now stared without shame. This was no longer entertainment. This was exposure. The footage showed the waiter moving behind the woman's chair, calm, steady, careful. His posture straight, his steps measured, the tray balanced like it had been 100 times before. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't distracted. He was doing his job the way he always did. The way he had been trained to do it, because mistakes were never forgiven when you looked like him. Then the woman stood up, too fast, too careless. Her chair scraped back. Her designer bag swung wide, heavy with whatever wealth always seemed to carry. The strap slipped from her shoulder, the bag arcing through the air without thought, without awareness of anyone else in the space. The glass tipped, Time slowed. It wobbled on the edge for a split second, suspended between balance and fall. Then it dropped, shattering against the marble floor in a sharp, unforgiving crash. The spill was hers. A gasp rippled through the restaurant, moving like a wave from table to table. Hands flew to mouths. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Another voice murmured, "Wow." The sound of truth landing was louder than any accusation that had come before it. The woman's face drained of color. Her lips parted slightly, and for the first time since this began, she didn't look in control. She didn't look powerful. She looked caught. "That's—" she began, her voice thin, unfamiliar. "This angle is misleading." Her words fell flat. The technician didn't respond. She didn't need to. She tapped the screen again. The footage replayed, slower this time, every movement stretched out, impossible to ignore. The waiter's careful steps, the woman's sudden rise, the careless swing of the bag, the glass falling, the mess forming, no confusion, no mistake, no shared blame, just cause and effect, just entitlement colliding with reality. The whispers grew sharper now, no longer polite or hushed. She did it, she blamed him, she almost got him fired. The words cut through the room like shards of the glass still scattered on the floor. The woman's shoulders stiffened. She looked around, searching for someone, anyone, to defend her, to agree with her, to pretend they hadn't seen what they had just seen. But the room had changed. The manager stood frozen, his mouth slightly open, his authority cracking right down the middle. The confident posture he'd carried minutes ago sagged under the weight of what was undeniable. I didn't realize," he said quietly. The words were weak, too late. They floated in the air like an apology that didn't know who it was really for. The waiter stood tall now. He hadn't moved. He hadn't spoken. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than anything else in the room. His shoulders were back. His chin was level. There was no triumph in his eyes. No smugness. Just dignity. Solid. Unshaken. Phones were no longer subtle. No one cared anymore. Screens were held openly, recording reactions, faces, consequences. The same people who had avoided eye contact with the waiter earlier now watched the woman closely, studying her discomfort with the same curiosity they'd once reserved for him. The woman's confidence collapsed inward. Her arms dropped to her sides. Her posture softened. The strength she had borrowed from status and assumption drained away, leaving her exposed in a way she clearly wasn't used to. "Can we talk privately?" she asked. Her voice was smaller now, quieter. The command was gone. The certainty was gone. She sounded like someone realizing too late that the room no longer belonged to her. The waiter met her eyes. For a moment, everything else faded. The noise, the people, the phones. It was just the two of them, standing on opposite sides of a truth that had finally come into the light. "No," he said calmly. One word. It carried weight. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It didn't need to be. It landed with a finality that made the woman flinch. That word said something deeper than refusal. It said, "This moment doesn't belong to you anymore." The manager cleared his throat, the sound sharp in the quiet that followed. He stepped closer to the waiter, not towering over him now, but standing beside him. "Sir," he said, his voice careful, "I owe you an apology." The room shifted again. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. It was subtle, like furniture being rearranged in a space everyone thought they understood. Power moved. Respect changed direction. The unspoken hierarchy cracked. The woman looked around and realized something terrifying. Her status couldn't save her from the truth. Not today. She saw it in the eyes watching her now. Not hatred, not cruelty, judgment, honest, unfiltered. She had always believed the world would bend around her version of events, that her word carried weight simply because it was hers, that someone like him would always be the easier sacrifice. She was wrong. The waiter felt the weight of the moment settle into his bones. Not relief, not pride, something deeper, validation. The kind that didn't need applause. The manager gestured to the technician. "Thank you," he said quietly. The technician nodded, her hand still shaking slightly as she lowered the tablet. She looked at the waiter again, offering a small, almost imperceptible smile. He returned it with a nod. Nothing more was needed. The woman opened her mouth, then closed it. Whatever she had planned to say no longer fit the room. She gathered her bag, her movements stiff, awkward. The elegance she'd worn like armor earlier now looked fragile, misplaced. As she stood, chairs scraped softly around her. No one moved to help. No one rushed to comfort her. The attention she had commanded earlier had turned into something colder. She took a step toward the exit, then stopped. For a brief second, she looked back at the waiter. Her eyes flickered with something unreadable: regret, embarrassment, anger, maybe all three. He didn't look away. That was the hardest part for her. The manager turned to the surrounding diners, his voice regaining some strength. "We apologize for the disturbance," he said. "Your meals will be taken care of." Money spoke again, trying to smooth over what had happened. But the room didn't forget. People nodded absently, still buzzing with the shift they had just witnessed. The guards stepped back, no longer needed. Their presence melted into the background, uncertain now who they were meant to protect. The waiter finally moved, setting his tray down gently on a nearby station. His hands were steady. He felt taller than he had moments ago, not because the world had lifted him, but because he had refused to shrink. The woman walked out without another word. The door closed behind her with a soft click, but the echo of her exit lingered. The space she left behind felt different, lighter, honest. The manager turned back to the waiter, his expression serious. "We'll talk," he said. "Properly." The waiter nodded once. He didn't speak. He didn't need promises. He had already seen what truth could do when it was allowed to stand. Around them, the restaurant slowly returned to motion. Conversations restarted, though quieter now. Forks lifted, glasses clinked, but something had shifted beneath the surface, something that couldn't be undone. The waiter bent down to begin cleaning the broken glass, instinct taking over. Then he stopped. The manager noticed. "No," he said quickly. "I'll have someone else handle that." The waiter straightened. Their eyes met again. This time there was no dismissal there, no assumption, just acknowledgement. As the technician walked away, tablet tucked under her arm, she glanced back one last time. The red light of the security camera blinked overhead, silent, indifferent, having told the story without bias. The waiter stood in the middle of the room, the center of a moment he hadn't asked for but had faced anyway. He felt the eyes on him, felt the weight of what had just happened, and understood something he hadn't fully known before. Truth doesn't need volume, dignity doesn't need permission, and power, real power, can change hands in an instant when the right angle finally shows the whole story. The room had seen him now, and it would never look at him the same way again. The apology came out loud and clear, not whispered, not hidden behind closed doors. The manager stood in the middle of the restaurant, his voice steady but heavy, carrying across every table that had watched the moment unfold. He didn't rush it. He didn't soften it. He said the words the way they should have been said from the beginning. He apologized for the accusation. He apologized for the assumption. He apologized for not listening when it mattered most. Every eye turned to the waiter. He didn't smile. He didn't nod too fast. He didn't soak it in like victory. He simply nodded once. That quiet response said more than any speech ever could. It said he didn't need validation to know his worth. It said he hadn't stood his ground for applause. It said dignity didn't beg for recognition. The woman stood there, exposed in a way money couldn't cover, not attacked, not mocked, just seen, fully, honestly. The truth had stripped her of the shield she had always relied on, and now she didn't know where to put her hands or where to rest her eyes. The room wasn't cruel to her. That somehow made it worse. Silence pressed in. "I was wrong," she said finally. The words came out slow, like she had to push them past something tight in her chest. They didn't sound rehearsed. They didn't sound graceful. They sounded unfamiliar, like a language she had never been forced to speak before. "I'm sorry." She looked at him when she said it. Really looked. Not down, not through him, at him. The waiter studied her for a long moment, not to punish her, not to embarrass her, but to understand what this moment meant. He saw a woman who had never expected to be corrected, someone who had grown up believing the world would always lean her way if she spoke with enough confidence, someone who had mistaken comfort for character, power for truth. "I forgive you," he said. The room stilled again. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't soften it either. The words were calm, centered. Not because she deserved it, but because he refused to carry her shame. That landed harder than anger ever could. The woman blinked rapidly, her composure slipping for the first time. Forgiveness wasn't part of the script she knew. Punishment she could understand, embarrassment she could survive, but mercy from the very person she had tried to crush felt heavier than any judgment. The manager stepped forward again, clearing his throat, suddenly eager to make things right. "Please," he said to the waiter, "let us do something for you. Take the night off. We'll compensate you. Anything you need." The offer came quickly, wrapped in good intentions and guilt. Money reaching for control again. The waiter shook his head. "I just want to work in a place where truth matters," he said. The simplicity of it stunned the room. No demand, no anger, no price tag, just truth. Applause broke out. Not loud, not forced, not the kind people gave to feel good about themselves. It was real. A few claps at first, then more, then enough to fill the space with something warm and honest. The waiter stood still as it washed over him, not feeding off it, not shrinking from it, just accepting it the way a man accepts rain after a long drought. The woman picked up her bag. No one rushed to help her. No one blocked her path. The attention she once commanded had softened into quiet observation. She walked toward the exit slowly, her steps measured, her posture different now. The sleeveless dress that once looked powerful now looked simple. Human. Just fabric on a body instead of armor. Before she reached the door, she stopped. She turned back once more, her eyes finding the waiter again. There was something there now, not pride, not superiority, something closer to humility. She nodded to him, small, genuine. Then she left. The door closed behind her without drama. No slam, no final word, just the quiet sound of a moment ending. The restaurant slowly breathed again. Conversation returned, but it was different now. Softer, thoughtful. People spoke in lower tones, replaying what they had witnessed, measuring themselves against it without realizing they were doing so. Plates were cleared, glasses refilled. Life moved on, but not unchanged. The manager stayed close to the waiter for a while, checking in, asking questions, offering reassurance that now sounded more like respect than authority. The waiter listened politely, responded briefly. He wasn't interested in speeches. He had already said what mattered. Later that night, when the rush thinned and the lights dimmed slightly, the waiter returned to clearing tables. Same uniform, same polished shoes, same quiet movements between chairs and tables. On the surface, nothing had changed, but everything had. He walked taller, not because he had been defended, but because he had defended himself. Customers looked at him differently now. Some smiled, some nodded, some said thank you with a weight behind it that hadn't been there before. Not pity, recognition. One older man caught his eye as he passed. "Handled yourself well," he said quietly. The waiter nodded back. No explanation needed. In the kitchen, staff whispered less and listened more. A few offered pats on the back when no one else was looking. The technician who had shown the footage passed by once, giving him a small thumbs up and a smile that said everything. As the night wound down, the waiter paused near the front of the restaurant, looking out at the street through the glass doors. Cars passed. City lights blinked. Somewhere out there, the woman was driving home, sitting with thoughts she hadn't planned on having. Somewhere else, someone else was being asked to apologize for something they didn't do. Somewhere, the same story was repeating. But not here, not tonight. The waiter adjusted his apron and stepped back into the room. He didn't need a promotion. He didn't need compensation. He didn't need an apology tour. He had something better. He had kept his dignity intact in a place designed to strip it away. And that stayed with him long after the last table was cleared and the lights were turned off. Because wealth can command rooms. Titles can silence people. Money can rewrite stories for a while. But dignity commands respect. And no amount of money can outrun the truth when it finally finds the right angle.